Hello everyone and welcome to a brand new video with me, the Drew Gamer. Today we are going to be looking at the newly released Kena Bridge of Spirits that came out on the 21st of September. And I'm so excited to talk about this. The first time I saw this game, and I believe it was at the PS5 reveal event, I was so excited for it. And then just seeing all the gameplay over the months and stuff, I'm just so excited to talk about it. So first of all though, the gameplay that you're going to see is just me pretty much doing the first hour and a half of the game, and I've just chopped it down to fit with this recording. So I haven't unlocked everything. It's just pretty much my first impressions, what I've gathered from the game, and just to give you an example, maybe it'll help you if you want to purchase it or if you haven't heard of it and you think, oh wow, I really want to get this game. So hopefully it helps. So first of all, we're going to do a quick story overview. You play as the name suggests, Kena, who is a spirit guide traveling to the Sacred Mountain, and it hasn't revealed why she's traveling to the Sacred Mountain yet, and I'm sure it will. I don't know if it's anything to do with like she needs to do it to become like a true spirit guide, or you know, it's like a rite of passage to become a spirit guide or something. And you start off in this cave, and it's just, and you're just traveling through, and you see these spirits, and you start following them around in order to guide you through so you can get through the cave. And once you get to a certain point, a corrupted soul appears, and Kena's like, oh well, I'm gonna try and save you, can I help you, sort of thing. And the spirit starts unleashing all this corrupted energy and all these sort of, I don't know if they're supposed to be other spirits that have also become corrupted, or if it's something that comes off them, like a negative emotion that then takes physical form. And as you get out of the forest, into the forest, you meet these two children who are playing with this little creature, and they are Benny and Saya. And at first you say, oh, they're just little kids running around, they're just, you know, enjoying the time. And then all of a sudden, like, they see Kena, and she tries to introduce herself, and then all of a sudden they run off and they vanish, and they're spirits. So it really sets the tone of what the game is like. Obviously, like, you've seen the corrupted spirit, but then you've also seen sort of the innocent sides of the spirits as well, which is, it's kind of sad, you know, like there's, you know, two ghosts and they're children, they're really young children. You'll see them in the video and stuff. They get pop up quite a lot in this first section. And then as they run off, you encounter what's called a rock wisp, and he becomes your partner. He's a little adorable little creature. I love him. I want a plush of him to add to my plush collection.
Hi there.
But when it's looking at her, she says, oh, what's wrong with it? And then it looks at her hand, like you'll see on her hand, it's like kind of covered up, but there's like these three blue lines, kind of like, it looks like it's going down her veins sort of thing. And there is obviously something wrong with Kena, but from what I've played so far, there hasn't been anything mentioning what is up with her or any indication of what is wrong with her. So maybe as a spirit guide, it's part of like what happens to them that makes any sense. And it's revealed a little bit later on in the story that her dad was a spirit guide. So I don't know if it's her family are all spirit guides, or if they have to follow a certain ritual to become one. So it's kind of interesting, and I'm really enjoying the story so far. There's been quite a few cutscenes, and it does kind of just throw you in. There's a little bit of story, and then all of a sudden you're in the cave, and then all these things are happening. And then it's been mostly so far about others rather than Kena. So I'm excited to learn more about Kena and why she is the way she is, what she's doing there, why she's going to the Sacred Mountain. So yeah, that's the basic overview of the story. So we'll get onto some gameplay. I'm sorry about it if I'm like really rambly. It's because I'm not used to doing these reviews yet, so bear with me, because I'm not breathing properly and I get nervous. So gameplay wise, Kena is a third-person action adventure with other elements in there too. It's not just purely action adventure, and it's really exciting, and I love the gameplay of it. It's so we'll get into it. So you start off, and then as soon as the game starts, it's like, use your pulse ability. So as I'm playing on the PS5, I'll be using the PS5 like controls. So you press L1, and all of a sudden, like this orb, this blue orb of light forms around her, and you let go of it, and it blasts off and pulses basically. And once you've done that, it starts lighting up all these different areas with the blue light. It doesn't affect everything, but it's very noticeable in the dark areas, so it's a perfect way to show that off. And I love how it looks and how it interacts with the environment around her, and all these runes start lighting up. But the pulse ability, it helps lead the way, but it also activates crystals that then open doors. So like, you'll get to a button, you stand on the button, you press the pulse ability, let it blast off, and it will hit a crystal, which will then resonate to the next crystal, which will then resonate to another crystal, which opens a crystal. It hits a crystal on top of a door, and the door opens so you can get through. So that's sort of like how it's introduced to you, and how it's useful. It can also be used in battle and for something else, which I'll get into a bit later, but that's the main use of it at the start. And then in combat, because you get sort of thrown into combat quite early on, actually. I wasn't expecting to get into a battle so quickly. You use a weapon, you use a staff with a crystal on the end of it as your main weapon. Eventually further down the line, you do get a bow, but I never got the bow. But from trailers and stuff, they showed examples of her using the bow. So you have the light attack, which is R1 for PlayStation. Heavy attack, which is R2. Circle is dodge. X is jump, but you can also double jump. And then if you time an enemy's attack perfectly, you can parry it with the pulse ability. So that's another example of what the pulse ability is used for. And that gets told to you a bit further into the game. It doesn't tell you straight away. So it's very simple combat. Like she does, if you hit light attack a few times, she will do like a 3-hit combo for that. But if you hold R2 down, she will charge up the heavy attack and then hit it, doing more damage. So it's kind of like a risk reward thing. So if you want to go in there, you can attack quickly and you'll take the enemies down slowly with the light attack, but technically you'll be doing more damage because you'll be doing 3 hits to them. But then you can also hit them with a heavy attack to do a lot of damage, but it takes a while for it to activate. Or if you hold it down further, you'll do even more damage, but then you have to wait for it to charge up. So it's interesting. And dodging is good. It's really quick. So you just hit it, you press circle, and she'll do a roll. But if you stood still, she'll roll in the direction that you face it. But if you just stood still and you press circle, she'll do a backflip, which is really cool. And it's very, like I said, it's very simple combat, but it works really well. I'm glad it's not overly complicated. It starts adding other elements into it as well, which I'll talk about in a second. So it's not just Kano that you need to rely on. You need to rely on other things too. And what gets interesting once you do get your little rock wisp buddy is that you can then start gathering other rock wisps, and this is where it's interesting, like the other elements of games come into it as well. And I'm trying to think of like an example. Like, I've never played Pikmin, but I feel like it's very kind of Pikmin-ish because you tell them to guide them to do different things, and you get them to pick up objects and stuff. So once you start finding them, you go up to it and then you press triangle. And the rock wisp could be hiding in a multitude of places. You know, there's like this chest that they could be under an object, they could be inside objects. You'll see like little charms floating around, or like lanterns, and you use your pulse ability again to do something, and it'll hit it, and it'll like a little glowing rock wisp will fall out of it, and then you collect it. It becomes part of you, and you have them following you around, which is really cool. I do like that they're all there, like following you around. And you use them, once you've collected a certain amount of them, you will level up your rock level. Like, I only ever did it once. And you need to collect a certain number of them to do that, and then I believe that unlocks more skills further down the line. So they're really adorable, and I do really like that system. It doesn't feel like it's a side thing. They're very integral to the combat and the story and the overall gameplay. They're not just like a side thing like, oh well, you need to use a rock wisp here occasionally, you need to use them to get around and stuff. So for instance, you will grab, you'll point to an object and they will appear around it and they will pick up the object, and you can tell them to move the object to a point where it will allow Kana to jump on that, and then she can jump up to a higher object or a higher place, or they'll lift it up and then underneath you'll find a rock wisp that then you can add to your collection, which is really cool. So it's a nice little feature and I do really like it. But they're also used, like I said, they're used in combat, and in order to use them in combat you have to build up a courage gauge, and it's like a little wheel down in the bottom left, and once you've built that up you can use them to perform abilities. So for instance, if you lock onto them and point your staff, you can press the square button and they will surround the enemy and bind them so the enemy can't move, which is really cool. So especially like say if you've got like 4 or 5 enemies around you and you have like one of the bigger enemies, because there is like obviously bigger enemies and harder enemies in the game, and they're not all just little minions, and while you're dealing with the minions you can stun the big guy, and then or while he's trying to like hit you with his heavy attacks and stuff, you can stun him and you can go in and you can start dealing some huge damage to him. What else do they do? Also there's these areas called dead zones, and you'll see them and they'll just be like corrupted areas. Sometimes they'll have a lot of enemies in them, sometimes they don't, and it's kind of like, it's very much to do with the forest. So everything going on is going around the forest from what I've played so far, and you'll see that these dead zones are infected by dead zone hearts, which are sort of like the center of a flower. There's like this big blooming flower and it'll open up, and in the center will be the dead zone heart, and you have to blow up the dead zone heart in order to do it, to cure it and heal the forest. And then once that's done, the whole area becomes cured and all the colors come back to it, because it's all dead, it looks rotten and stuff. So once you've done that, you have to point your wisps at it, and then you hit, like you point it, hit square, and then they'll start surrounding it, and then you use your pulse ability to blow it up. So again, that's another use for the rock wisp and another use for your pulse ability. So it's all integral to how the game works. It's not, like I said, not just side stuff. But sometimes while you're doing that, there's enemies coming after you, so you have to make sure that you blow up the dead zone hearts, but also make sure you take out the enemies, because even if you blow up all the dead zone hearts, I think the enemies are just still there, so you have to make sure you take them out too. And you can also use the rock wisps to heal you. Like they'll see a flower and then you'll send them to the flower and they'll pull it back and heal you, because outside of battle your health regenerates, but in battle obviously it doesn't, to make it a bit fairer. They also have an ability,
the rot seem quite fond of you.
once you get a bit further into the game, which is called the forest tear. So you pick up a forest tear, and then the wisps kind of all become part of the tear. They'll all go inside it, sort of thing, and they travel around, and you have to guide them in order to hit enemies with either a spin attack or like a slam attack, or once you get a little bit further, there's like these corrupted flowers and stuff that will block your path, so you have to use that ability in order to do that. You have to get a forest here and then guide them in order to hit the corrupted zones, and then that'll blow up so you can walk through it, or it'll just disintegrate, sort of thing. One thing I do really like though is when I first started doing it, you'll probably have seen it at this point, is the ability to interact with your rock wisp. I believe it's just the first one that you can do it with, and you sit on the floor and it'll give you options like dance and kiss, and you have to press the right button, and Kano will interact with it, and then the other Rotwisps will like it. They'll start getting hearts around them. So I think there might be like a building of friendship involved somehow. I need to do it a bit more because I only sort of started doing it. I accidentally discovered it when I was first playing it. I was like, oh, how did I do that? And then I couldn't figure out how I did it. And then I do it a bit later on once I realize what I'm doing. And you unlock skill points as you do certain things, and you use them obviously to spend on skills. I used it to buy a couple of skills. One of them is like while you're running, if you hit R1, she'll do a jump spin attack to hit him. There's like some abilities such as if you parry and then hit R1, she will do a counter attack. She won't just parry and then you can walk in and hit them. She will actually counter attack him. And then there was a couple of abilities involving the pulse, I think. I didn't unlock too many of them, and I still need to do it. And then you also get like a currency, and at first, because it didn't really explain it, I'll get into sort of more negatives a bit later, but it didn't really explain what it was. And then I realized that it was to buy items, and I don't know if there's multiple items in the game, but you can buy hats for your little wisps, for your little rot wisps. And once you've bought them, you can equip them to them if you go to the hat store, because it'll suddenly say, oh, hat store is now available. But you can find the hats in different places. So you might find them in a chest, you might find them, again, like the Rotwisp, you might find them under an object or by doing certain things. You will discover them, and then you can buy them. Or I think it adds to your collection, but then you can buy multiple of them. So you can have all your Rotwisps wearing the same one, or you can have them all wearing different hats, which is kind of cool. So far I've had like a pot, I've had a mushroom, I've had a bow, a cake, and some other stuff. So it's really cute that you can do that. You can customize them to however you want. You can have an army of Rotwisp cakes running around with you if you wanted, or have them with hats on. And I don't think it does anything gameplay wise. I think it's just literally an aesthetic thing, which is really cool.
Over here, Kena, there's something.
There are side quests from what I've gathered. I found a sign, and I read the sign, and it said, oh, he used to play over in the other house. So then I had to go over to the other house to get this item. And once I got the item, I went back and I had to kill some enemies. And then once I killed them, there was a spirit of a child. And I gave him the object, and he was able to move on. So I really like that. That's really cool that you can do that and help spirits move on. By helping them find what they need. And you can use masks. Like I've only got one so far, and it says as part of the story that every spirit is tied to a mask. And you go to this village that Benny and Saya lead you to, and it's all full of dead zones, so you have to cure the dead zones. But everyone in it is a spirit. There hasn't been that many that I've seen, but the main person you speak to, he gives you a mask of Benny and Saya's brother, and the first sort of major story is that you are going off to help their brother, who is dead, and he's kind of like lost in the forest, and he's all confused. But in order to find him, you have to have his mask, which then there's like a barrier in the way with his mask on the front of it. So then once you've got that, you can put it on, and it will show you. It'll open up, but then it will also show you where there are Rotwisps that you can collect if you keep looking around, or it'll show you objects that you can interact with. So there is a use for it as well outside of the story, and you use them to sort of start building up memories of stuff and how that person became the way they are. And I really I think that's such a cool way of doing it. And overall in the gameplay though, it's really simple, but there's a lot of elements going on as well. So it's like your standard action adventure sort of thing, but then there's like all these elements going on. It's like the element of the Rotwisp. You're using them to get around. It's not just you collect them and they're just sort of there, or they're just creatures that are in the area. They're not just in the area and they're just sort of gathered around in different places. You have to actually use them to get around, or you have to use your pulse ability to unlock areas in order to get to more rock wisps or other objectives. So we're going to talk about the positives for this. So this, I don't know, I'm hoping this video is going to be about half an hour, so I've got about 10 minutes left. Because I haven't done too much of it, so like I can't go super detailed in everything, but from what I've played of it, the game, like Kena, it's stunning. Like I cannot fault the visuals for this game at all. It's so, the visuals are they're just so incredible. It's absolutely stunning. Like as soon as you start the game, you get the ability of the pulse, and like I said, it's in like a dark cave area, and instantly as soon as you use the pulse ability, you see all these like particle effects and all these effects like of the light traveling through the floor, and then it lights up the wall or it lights up the rooms, and it really gives you a sense of what the game is going to be like visually, and it's just breathtaking. It really does look like a sort of a Disney or a Pixar movie in the way that the characters are. They have like the big eyes and the very stylized look to them, and I'm so impressed with how the game looks and how it shows off the forest. Like the forest is very interactive in terms of how everything is affected in the environment. So there's like the trees are blowing in the wind, the grass is moving. When Kena does something, it does affect it, or if you use your pulse ability and it lights up in the areas outside. You can't really see some of it outside, for instance, like when you see a rune, unless it's in sort of a darkened area, it won't be as vibrant as when you're in the cave, for instance. But there's just so many elements happening in the world around you, and the way the music integrates into that, because the music is beautiful. I don't know how you describe it. I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it, but it's very environmental and it fits the whole sort of forest theme really well. It's kind of like in Wind Waker, when it's the way that I describe it is very foresty music. It's using elements of how a forest sounds in order to emphasize where you are. But it does sound very environmental on top of it. It's not just music that's playing. There's a lot of elements going on, a lot of wood instruments, a lot of sort of like I don't know what the word is. But the music just fits perfectly, basically. And story-wise, so far, I'm really enjoying it. I'm loving learning about what's going on and how the world is. There's a lot of world building going on in terms of, we know that we need to get to the Sacred Mountain. There's stuff about spirits. There's ghosts everywhere. It's like, why is Kena a spirit guide? And how the rot wisps are incorporated into that, and how those that have become tainted, I think that's probably the best way to describe it, like there's tainted souls and how they are affecting the world. It really just throws you straight into the game and the world that you're in, and you do get a sense of feeling that it is a very, as beautiful as the world is, it's a very tragic world, because there are so many spirits around and you've got to help them. I haven't met anyone that is a real person yet, so that gives you an example of like what's going on and how emotional it is. Because then once we started going towards Tara, we started learning why he's so lost. And it's very emotional in that sort of thing, and we have to gather all these relics in order to get to him and bring his soul back together. But the rock wisps are adorable as well. I love the rock wisps, and I love how they are integrated into the game and how they're integrated into the actual gameplay. They're not just there for effect sort of thing. They are very important. They fit really well into it, and I don't mind that they're there at all. Because some games they'll have that sort of feature where you have to use creatures and stuff, and they just feel like, oh well, it's just they're there just to get through this one area. But they're going to be a big part of the game, and I can't wait to learn more about them. And so far, like story-wise as well, there has been a lot of development with Benny and Sire as well. We've learned more about them, and we're going to learn about more of the characters as we go along, which kind of brings me into the negatives. Like, I don't have many negatives for this game at all. I've only got notes for like 4. At the start, the best way to describe this is like, not everything is shown from the start, and what I mean by that is you start off and you're in the cave and you don't have anything. You don't have a map, you don't have the ability to look at the menu or anything like that, so you can just pause it, but you can't do anything with it. And as you progress in, that sort of starts unlocking, and I don't mind the fact that they do it, but the way they should have done it, I feel like, is like just have it locked. You can open it, but it's just like, oh, the map's not available right now, or you can look at the menu but you can't unlock anything in it, sort of thing. Because it felt weird not being able to do it, because I was gathering all these points and all this this money, or I don't know what the currency is considered, but I was gathering all this stuff and I didn't know what it was for, and it didn't really explain it at all and how to use it or what it was for until I got to a certain point. And even then, with the money, it didn't explain until I actually went to the shop, the hat shop, because all of a sudden it was like, oh, hat shop available. I didn't realize I could go up to the hat shop and then press the button and it would open the shop and I could buy hats and stuff. That was my own fault because I didn't go over to it and experience it. But I think I walked up to it, but I didn't press the right button, or something happened and I just didn't know. And then I was like, well, how do I equip all these hats that I keep finding? So I feel like it doesn't really affect the overall game, because once you've unlocked those sorts of things, it's fine. And there's just it would just been nice to have the UI and all the menus and stuff unlocked from the start, rather than unlocking it periodically. Because there are elements in, like Final Fantasy, for instance, we'll go with 7, where you can go in the menu, but not all the options are there for you. You start unlocking more options as you go through the game. And that's fine, I don't mind it doing that, but it still gave me the option to look at the menu and look at all the stats of the characters and stuff. And so I wanted to have like a menu with Kano or something. Or what would have been cool, this isn't really negative either, this is just something that I think would have been cool, is sort of a notebook style thing. So it gave you notes on all the characters and who they are, what they do, how the world, because I love my lore. I want to be able to know what's going on. I want to be able to read through these things. Not everyone likes that though. I want to be able to read through it and learn about the world, because I want to be really immersed in the world. And I do feel like I'm becoming more immersed the more I play it. So far, from what I've played of the story, there's been a lot about everyone else, but not a lot about Kana, and that's probably just because of the where I am in the game. But it's been all about. I mean, technically, it is still about Kana. Like, she is guiding the spirits. She is going to it. You know, her goal is that she needs to get to the Sacred Mountain, but we don't know why. And she has the issue with her hand. So it's like, well, what's wrong with Kana? And there hasn't been, other than that first cutscene, there hasn't been any indication of anything to do with Kana. And like I said, I'm about an hour and a half in, and I believe the game, from what I've seen, is anywhere between like 7 to 10 hours if you play it sort of, even just go from start to finish, you don't do all the side stuff. So I wish there was a bit more, because you start the game and it gives you like the brief introduction of what's going on, and then you're in the cave, and then Kana meets the spirit, so it's kind of like, oh, okay, so this is what she does, and then you start learning more about it, and she gets introduced to the Rot Wisp. But it's very much about this other people, like Kana's getting to the village because she needs to get to the village to get to the Sacred Mountain, but Benny and Saya are leading her there so that they can talk to their elder, who then helps her to get to Taro. So now we're dealing with Taro, but it's still part of the Benny and Saya side quest story part. And it's not about Kana. There should be more about Kana, I feel like. And that's probably just because of where I am in the game, but I just hope that they explain more about what she's going through, and not so much on keep the amount of what's been going on with the spirits to what it is, but don't like say the spirits up here and Kana's down here, make her equal to them or more than, because she is the main character. Don't keep her story at the back just for specific events. And I think my only other complaint, it's not even like a big issue, and even like the Kana thing as part of the story isn't that big of an issue. Is the button mapping, and that's been sort of like a recent thing in a lot of games, honestly, is the fact that they're not using the actual buttons, at least on the consoles, they're not using the actual buttons as attacking. So like, obviously growing up with stuff like Dynasty Warriors and Samurai Warriors, or even other games, all the buttons were sort of mapped to like square, triangle, X, or circle, but now they seem to be more mapped to the shoulder buttons, and the other buttons do other stuff. And I haven't gone into the settings to be able to see if I can change this, but for instance, when you get the Forest Tier ability and you start using it, I didn't understand how it works, because you still, it'll say like, oh, if you press R1 it will do the spin attack, if you press R2 it will do the slam attack, but I didn't understand how to move it, and it was mapped to the right analog stick, and you have to guide them with the right stick. So wherever she's pointing, the Rot Wisp will move to that location, and you use it, and then you use the attack. But while you're in battle and you're trying to move away from the enemies, and you're controlling the Rot Wisp with the right stick and trying to attack and stuff, it got quite confusing. I've gotten used to it now, but I wish it was a bit simpler to control it. Or if you suddenly, like, say, while they were in that form, if you press triangle, they will go to sort of the point where she is pointing to, and then they can attack that rather than you guiding it. And they just, or otherwise they just follow you around, sort of thing. That would have been cool, rather than me controlling it. And it doesn't last for too long, so it's not that much of an issue. It has a bar, and then it'll go down on its own, but if you use the attacks, it will also go down, and then it'll run out.
Keep going.
And then, just for some final thoughts, I'm in love with this game. I love it so much. Just the overall, the world, the visuals, the gameplay. It's just, I love it all. And even there, like, when I had some negatives, they weren't even that bad negatives. I wouldn't even mark it down that much because of those. I'd probably give it, the overall game, I'd probably give a 9 for me personally, because it's very much up my alley in the type of game that it is. The visuals look stunning, like I said, the particle effect, the lighting, how Kana's abilities are integral to the world, how it's a very beautiful game, but it has the element of sadness sort of within it, because of all the spirits and how some of them are corrupted, some of them are tainted, and then some of them just want help, and we need to figure out how to help them to get them over to the other side, and they're lost. And that's such a beautiful sentiment, and in order to be able to help someone who has died, and you need to help them move on. And I'm really happy with this game. I can't wait to play more of it, and hopefully this review was good for you and it helps you sort of if you're on the fence of buying it, I would highly recommend it. And I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope those who are playing the game right now are enjoying it as well. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.